The entirety of the League of Legends ecosystem could be flipping on its head in the next year, as Riot has announced that there's going to be a new revenue share model for all teams across the esport. It could be the dawn of a new era, similar to what the WNBA is going through right now. I understand the crossover isn't that heavy, so if you don't know who Caitlin Clark is, let me explain. She is a prodigy talent for the WNBA, for women's college basketball, for women's basketball period. She went to the University of Iowa, became the school's all-time leading scorer, I think became the NCAA all-time leading scorer, and for the first time ever was the reason why the women's national championship for the NCAA had higher viewership than the men's final. She is a superstar. She is going to be leading the next generation of talent that could possibly be bringing the WNBA into its new golden era. She signed a $10 million deal with Nike. Her personal brand is bigger than ever. And how much did she sign her rookie contract for? A mere $70,000. Right around the same amount that your new graduates going to the Big Four and working in consulting are going to be making. Hence why I'm dressed like this. I wanted to play the part. Because fun fact, even though I didn't do consulting, yeah, I did my time at a mid-sized accounting firm, so this was the work attire for a period of time. Well, what does the WNBA have to do with League of Legends? Well, the reason why Caitlin Clark is only getting paid a little over $70,000 is because the WNBA loses money each and every year. There's not enough people watching. They can't sell the media rights for a high price. There's not enough food, beverage, tickets. I mean, Bill Burr has kind of already said this in much greater depth. Even though it was a joke, it still hit pretty hard.
Literally, I'm sitting at home screaming at the TV because you don't sell any fucking tickets! You're playing in a 20,000 seat arena, 1,500 people show up. That's not a good night!
And LoL Esports is very much going through a similar problem right now, even if obviously Riot has been profitable on the international event side. It's not the same case where we're losing money each and every year. Obviously, we're selling out arenas whenever we go to them, not talking about domestic, just international. And the teams themselves can operate on a break-even basis, given that they get a specific stipend from the LCS, from Riot each and every year, but that is going to be changing. Why? Because ad sales are down across every industry. Sponsorship revenue has gone away. Look at Travis Gafford. He cannot find a sponsor right now for Hotline League, and he's consistently driving more YouTube traffic than most LCS teams are for any of their content, and he can't find anybody. Or at least nobody that would probably make him a deal that's worth his time and value. But it's not just there. The ad sales market in general has just shrunk. So in return, LCS teams are getting hit hard by this. Their amount that they're getting from Riot, even though they do have a minimum guarantee, it's dropping and dropping and dropping. So the question always was, where does this potential money, where does our profitability long-term for LoL Esports, for LCS teams, for everybody else, where does it come? The answer has always been skin sales. But we've never historically gotten a portion of that pie until now. John Needham announced in a post that we're going to be switching to a global revenue pool which will be distributed across all teams across the LoL Esports ecosystem, which is going to focus mostly on digital and in-game sales. So all teams can push whatever skin lines, whatever items, whatever cosmetics will contribute to this global revenue pool, which will then be distributed. Now, yes, there's still going to be ad sales and sponsorships that will get distributed, but notably, that is only after Riot has recouped their cost, and then it's 50%, I think, on top of that. So don't count on that. That's not going to be where teams make the majority of their money. Where that will likely be is affiliated skin lines. But you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, wait, the LCS teams were getting paid that 2 to 3 million, probably less this year, directly from the LCS. You're saying that Riot is doing this globally. Yes. It is no longer just the LCS. It is a global revenue pool, which is going to have impacts on LCS teams and how much money they're making. So let's talk about how it's distributed. We're gonna have to use made-up numbers for this because we obviously don't know the total amount of revenue that's being pulled out. I will say I think we might actually get some sort of indication, or at least a portion of this, whenever the parent company for the Toronto Ultra that also happens to own, I think, Mad Lions. I'm not remembering at the time of talking about this, but you'll see it on the screen to my right here. They're a publicly traded company, so their revenue numbers will be reported in their financial statements that we can review. So once this change takes place in 2025, we might actually be able to get an idea at one, how popular is their team relative to the rest, and two, how much money are they getting? That obviously won't translate to how much T1 is getting versus Immortals, but we'll get an idea. So let's make up a number entirely and say there is $10 million, a big 8-figure amount. That is total revenue, total GRP for 2025 for the LoL esports ecosystem. How much does my team get of that? First and foremost, 50% of that amount is distributed equally amongst all Tier 1 organizations. So yes, the LCK, the LEC, the LCS, you are splitting up that payment. So I'll keep the math over here on the side and just kind of give you an idea. It's not as much as you would think already, and we're at 50% of the pool. So okay, how do each individual team separate themselves from another? Since it's obviously all not flatly distributed. The next portion, 35% of that, comes from competitive results. That includes your international events like Worlds, like MSI. We don't know if the Esports World Cup and third-party events will have any influence on that at all. I can't imagine they would. I think it would just be the Riot direct affiliated products. And then domestic results will play a part in that as well, because obviously there are some teams that don't go to international events, so you don't just want to heavily reward 35% of that pie to just 20-some teams each and every year. That wouldn't be good. So we're not sure how they're going to power rank it, but you can assume pretty clearly that somebody like T1, Gen G, teams that are going to be at the top of the competitive standings, both in the LCK and then having a legitimate chance of winning Worlds each and every year, they're going to get a good amount of money. Immortals, who is sitting at the bottom of the LCS, arguably the worst, quote unquote, or at least tied for one of the worst regions of the major four, they're going to get hurt pretty bad, in addition to not being able to go to international tournaments. So I don't even know what percentage you put of that 35% here. Like maybe, I don't know, say they get 1% of it. I mean, even 1%, in all honesty, feels like you're like overvaluing that at least a little bit. But again, we're shooting in the dark here. We have no clue. So I'm just gonna throw 1%. There's no way they're driving 1/5 of the value in terms of the competitive results, but I digress. The final 15% is going to be based on fandom. How popular is your team? How much attention are you driving? Now, what I don't understand on this is that just gonna be like watching? Are we talking total average concurrence anytime that your particular team is playing? Are we talking icon sales at Worlds and MSI, which I already thought were going directly to the teams that they're associated with? So I'm not clear, I'm not 100% certain on that one at all. But it's safe to say, if we're talking global popularity, once again, your teams like Immortals and Dignitas, of that 15%, you're not getting much because your fandom relative to the top teams of the LCK, because we are comparing to all of the regions now, it's not just LCS, it's everybody, you're at the bottom. You're driving the least amount of viewership, the least amount of attention on social media, and I highly doubt even if they added icons for every single team in the game, you're not getting much. So you're getting, we'll say, of that 15%, I don't know, we're creative accounting, which don't do. Like, don't ever do that. That's illegal. Don't. So if you're Immortals, you're the bottom team of the LCS. This is how much money you're making. Think about how different that is from the 2 to 3 million you were just getting a year ago. Is that now worth you staying in the LCS? Is that worth you being a part of this ecosystem? Well, the answer is, how much do you care? Because the truth is, it is going to light a fire under the ass of every single team that is going to be seeing a significant drop off of revenue that they are getting from the equal distribution, especially in the LCS that they were previously getting. You want to increase your revenue, you want to sign better players, you can still get individual team sponsorships, but we've already talked about how that's drying up, so you're more going to be reliant on this global revenue pool, which you have very little sway in. So how can you change that? How can you go from being one of those bottom teams to the top? Well, you improve your region. That 50% at the top is equally distributed. You can't do anything about that other than just driving additional sales. If you can get people to buy skins in game, then yeah, sure, you get a little bit of benefit. You get 50% of that, but you want to try and capture the other 5 million chunk that is there. So you can work on improving your region's competitive results, because if North America is performing better, maybe they do split it up by region instead of individual team performance. In that case, it benefits you to make sure that we are getting better players, and that doesn't just mean importing. That means developing better talent here, because you can only have 2 imports on a team. So maybe that money gets reinvested into our tier 2 scene. Maybe that comes with doing additional content, because that 15% fandom share sure as hell isn't going to come if you're only playing regular season games and you can't make it to the playoffs. Or even more importantly, you get to the playoffs and you haven't built a brand around any of your players, any of your staff, any management, anything. You got no reason for people to cheer for you. Well, guess what? You just eliminated 15% of your total revenue that you could be earning. Teams now have to bust their ass, and it is going to be hard for some of the people at the bottom to dig their way out of the holes that they're in. Quite frankly, I think some of them are gonna have to sell, because immediately Sentinels would come into the LCS and be positioned better than half of the other LCS teams purely on the fandom shares alone. They know they're not going to get competitive results in the LCS. No, it's not realistic for any LCS team to expect that you're going to get anything major there. But if you can cut into that fandom split, then maybe. It's amazing how similar of a position we actually are for League of Legends esports to the WNBA. Because the truth is, if we weren't positioned in California for the LCS, where minimum salary is required to be a certain amount, the salaries would be lower. Caitlin Clark is driving 20 times the attention that any player in the LCS, or probably even LEC, is driving online. And she's not even getting paid a portion of that, because the WNBA is not driving the value that's needed to pay more than $70,000. Luckily, she has her own personal brands. But there's not a single LCS player that I look at this and be like, yeah, they can probably do that. They have that level of influence. No, they don't at all. So we are lucky that Riot doesn't pull the floor out. If we moved it away from California, players would be earning even less. It would actually be obnoxious how much less money players would make. So we're getting bailed out here, and the incentives are now aligned for everybody to finally realize, yeah, we need to raise the popularity of League of Legends, of our fans, of our teams, and of our players to be able to make more money. The WNBA is going to be going through this right now as they start selling more tickets, having more events, expanding the league, expanding their reach and their audience, and the LCS and League of Legends needs to do that as well, because otherwise the LCK are going to dominate their share of this global revenue pool. We very much are the WNBA in terms of the LCS to the NBA that is the LPL and LCK. We are surviving off of them for now. It's about time that we start pulling our weight, and it is going to take time, investment, and a little bit of luck to get there. But if you have the right people in the right situations, it can happen. Incentives are aligned, and that's the biggest starter. Question is, where do we go from here? Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm dressed like a KPMG consultant. It's time for me to go play golf and schmooze up with a partner and see if he can promote me to senior manager. That yearly bonus check sounds nice, and you don't get those at an associate level.